Yeah. This is Faceless Opinion, and you know what that means. Welcome you back to another video. Something that not many people know about me is that I am a huge fan of pro wrestling. Started watching it back when I was in middle school, over 12 years ago. But ever since I finished college, I started getting back into watching it more frequently. One thing that got me more invested in it was the introduction of a new wrestling company that I saw commercials for back in 2019, for a new promotion called All Elite Wrestling, AEW. It was then, on October 2nd, 2019, that I watched the first ever episode of Wednesday Night Dynamite, and I've been hooked on it, until a few months ago. My interest with it has been starting to diminish, and I just really can't be bothered to pay attention to it. Which leads me to pulling out my phone and goofing off with it playing in the background, or just changing the channel to turning it off altogether. I'm not alone with that since I watch AEW with my dad, something that we do every week since it's been on the air, and he is in the same mindset with me. For me, there are a fair share of issues that AEW has that's really making me not really care about the promotion at all. Now, for the record, the point of this video is not to say that AEW sucks. I am not a WWE stan or fanboy. Trust me, WWE has its fair share of issues, but AEW is not perfect. Far from it. And if they want to be a proper alternative to the WWE, or to even surpass it, they need to reevaluate and course correct what they are doing.
It was a stupid idea from bad creative and all that's gone.
Wins and losses matter here at AEW, something that you'll often hear from the commentary table, and that is something we can all agree on. As someone has the promotion's top level belt, they should not be taking L's on a weekly basis. And if there is a wrestler you want to push, it would make sense for that person to start getting some W's, to build them up. However, that's not what they are talking about. Instead, when the topic of wins and losses come up, it is only to talk about the ranking system. And let me tell you, I do not like the ranking system. It is something that should be scrapped since it does not really contribute anything. Like, I have no issue if you want to keep track of how many wins and losses a wrestler gets, for logistical reasons, and that is a-okay, but trying to make it to where it determines who is going to be next in line for a title shot, not so much. Like, you could be in the number one spot for 2 months and not get a title shot, yet some random person who isn't even ranked could end up getting a title shot by winning a number one contenders match, or if some feud occurs which slingshots someone ahead of the line. Not to mention the rankings themselves are confusing in itself. How does the TNT Championship factor into the rankings? How are contenders determined, or is it just first come, first serve? Besides, how come the TNT champion isn't ranked when it comes towards the world title? Is the TNT champion not allowed to be ranked for the world title? Why? Seriously, I'm trying to make sense of this. Like, why do we need things like the Casino Battle Royal or the ladder match to determine a number one contender? Isn't the whole reason as to why there is a ranking system to begin with? And you know it's bad when wrestlers themselves talk about the rankings not making any sense during promos. Being aware that you have an issue and not taking any steps to fix it is not doing any favors. Though I think the worst thing about it has to be that quality of wins don't mean anything. Like, you could have someone increase their rank by doing squash matches on AEW Dark. They are artificially increasing wins just to justify their ranking system. I mean, seriously, squash matches on Dark give you a better chance at a title match than being an established wrestler. That is sad. It should be quality over quantity, not the other way around. Now that I have brought up Dark, that leads me to my next point.
It was a stupid idea from bad creative and all that's gone.
There is so much going on, but so little is actually happening. You have so many AEW programs. You got the main show, Dynamite, on Wednesdays, AEW Dark and Dark Elevation, both of which are available on YouTube, as well as a new show coming out, Rampage, which at time of recording has not come out yet, so I won't be dwelling too much on that one. Let me tell you, when it comes to Dark, it is something not worth watching. I have no interest in watching main roster stars face off against jobbers. Now, there will be those in the comments section that will say that Dark gives indie wrestlers a place to earn a living since 2020 was a rough year for a lot of people. That is not the issue. I am perfectly fine with AEW wanting to help small-time wrestlers. I, however, have zero interest in wanting to watch over an hour of squash matches, where every match is predictable. It makes things worse when a wrestler on the main show earns wins on Dark and bumps up their ranking, but I don't want to get into that again. Then we get to Dark Elevation, which is basically just Dark with a different layout. Honest question, what is the difference between Dark and Elevation? I am being absolutely serious. What is the difference? In my eyes, it is the same exact thing. Everything I said about Dark can be said about Elevation. The only difference is that the Big Show is a commentator on Elevation. That is the only big draw for Elevation that has a wrestling icon like him on it. And I feel like it's going to be the same case for Rampage, since Mark Henry, the world's strongest man, is going to be a prominent figure there. I feel like the only reason all these shows exist is because their roster is extremely bloated, and that they don't know what to do with all this talent. There are only really two things that can be done about this issue, because squash matches against jobbers don't do anything for anybody. So it's either going to be option A, making Dynamite a 3-hour show, giving them more time to flesh out their roster, which I don't think is a good idea. Case in point, look at the WWE with Monday Night Raw. Or option B, which may not be a popular choice, but we have to consider all options, and that would be to make some releases. Because let's be real honest, there are some people there that aren't really needed. Like, would anyone notice nor care if they let go of, for example, Joey Janela, Kip Sabian, Sonny Kiss, or Lufer? Be free to disagree with me, but wouldn't it be better to let some people go and have them fare better elsewhere than having them only be relevant on some subpar YouTube show?
It was a stupid idea from bad creative and all that's gone.
When it comes to the subject of booking, I would say that it is very subjective. For example, I could say that someone like Lance Archer should be booked a lot more and should become a champion. And someone like MJF, I wouldn't give his current booking. Something like that is very dependent on what you like or dislike. Now, when it comes to how AEW books its storylines and feuds, there are some decisions that really make me raise my eyebrow about what I just watched. Let's talk about Eddie Kingston, because this one confuses me the most. He has a feud against a returning Pac, which leads to Death Triangle reuniting. Alright, that is fine. Makes perfect sense to me. The events leading up to it make sense. Now tell me, why the hell is Lance Archer shoehorning himself into this and is going after Kingston? The reason for his involvement is asinine, because of a mishap that happened during a battle royal for a world title match. Seriously, this could have been resolved easily just by having the two face off on a match in the next episode of Dynamite. But no, they dragged this out for weeks, having it at times interfere with the feud with Death Triangle and Eddie's family, even teasing a possible encounter between Pac and Archer. But no, nothing came out of it. Also, factor in that we never got a trios match with Pac, Fenix, and Penta versus Eddie, the Butcher, and the Blade, making everything that transpired for nothing. Then after that, Eddie abandons the Butcher, Blade, and Bunny to hang out with Jon Moxley, even though it wasn't that long ago that those two were in the middle of a heated feud for the world title. So much for family, huh, Eddie? How does this make sense? This is very questionable. Another instance of this would be Miro. First, he had that goofy feud he and Kip Sabian had with Best Friends, which was god-awful and lasted for far too long. Keep in mind, I like Best Friends, my favorite tag team. I have a whole bunch of their merch. Only good thing that came from it was the Arcade Anarchy match. Everything else was hot trash. The wedding was boring. The thing with Chuck Taylor becoming Miro's butler could have been done a lot better. I mean, seriously, he was his butler for 3 weeks, and he wasn't even treated that badly. Then what happens after that? Miro wins a few matches on Dark and becomes TNT champion, and they're trying to make him this all-powerful madman? Yeah, no, they jumped the gun with him. Had him debut with this nonsense and trying to make him a beast with no build-up does not work. Also, don't forget that the last thing he was involved with while he was in the WWE was that love triangle with him, Lana, and Bobby Lashley. So let's just say they did not build him up right. Though I would say my biggest complaint would have to be about how they used the tag team division, which is odd because the biggest strength of AEW is tag team wrestling. For me, the issue started when Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega took the belts off of SCU, who were the best tag champs, by the way. I mean, why put the belts on them? They were only teaming up for at most a month and become champions? Not to mention, I seem to recall Hangman wanted nothing to do with the Elite anymore and wanted to do his own thing, but ends up getting paired with Kenny because why? Anyhow, they should not have held the belts as long as they did. Then FTR become the champs, even though they've been in the company for, 2 months at that point? I feel like there were other teams that possibly deserved it more, but that isn't the point. FTR is a good team, and I would say that they could have been good champs if they actually had the belts longer than they did. Which leads to the Young Bucks, who I would say have effectively devalued the tag team championships. Why I say that? They rarely defend the titles, And when they do, it's always against put together teams instead of legitimate ones, like MJF and Jericho, Moxley and Kingston, Kingston and Penta, Pac and Fenix. Though for the last one, yes, they are in the same faction of Death Triangle. However, it would make more sense to see Fenix and Penta team up since they are a tag team. Not to mention, I just can't stand the Bucks. Keep in mind, this is way before the Bucks won the tag titles and before they turned heel. I mean, seriously, when they were super kicking everyone, it just made them look like crybabies. Then they started acting like goody-goodies after they won the belt. It was just a load of bull. But what would I expect from them, since they are the EVPs? Now, for those who don't know, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and the Young Bucks are all executive vice presidents within AEW, which means they have a lot of power what goes down in the company. In my personal opinion, I think it is a conflict of interest that they are EVPs and are active and prominent wrestlers. Kenny is the world champion. The Bucks are tag team champs alongside him in the Elite. Cody is a two-time TNT champion and was the first one to hold the belt. You see what I'm getting at? Now, I will say that I don't know the capacity in which they use their executive powers, but where there is smoke, there is fire. And people like to say Triple H buried talent. Anyhow, if they want to be EVPs, fine. I just think, in my opinion, they should not be active wrestlers. If they want to wrestle, fine. They shouldn't be EVPs. And the fact that they are both should raise red flags. Sure, you can say that there is restraint on their end with Cody putting in the stipulation where he can never compete for the world title. I don't believe that for a second. It is a matter of time when it gets tossed aside and he goes for the world title. And if he is telling the truth and never holds that belt, I'm more than willing to admit that I was 100% wrong. But until that day, I am standing by my statements about them because the booking is all over the place.
It was a stupid idea from bad creative and all that's gone.
Not every faction is created equally. Not every faction is going to be used to their fullest capacity. Not every faction is going to be entertaining. For every inner circle, there's going to be 3 nightmare collectives. Remember when that was a thing? Now, when it comes to factions, they can be either very entertaining or very lackluster. And for a good chunk of the factions that reside in AEW, they fall into the latter category. Take, for example, the Factory. Does anyone give a crap about this group? I certainly don't. They only exist to give Cody Rhodes something to do, because without Cody, no one would give 2 hoots about wannabe mob boss QT Marshall, an overgrown hairy mountain man, Bailey's ex-boyfriend, and some mushmouth boxer whose ultimate finishing move is a gut punch. Lame. Or how about the Wingmen, who are a new faction that just formed at the time of recording, consisting of a bunch of guys who frequent dark. So that should tell you all about them. Who else we got? The Hardy Family Office? To be honest, I don't really mind that Matt Hardy is acting like a managerial figure for Private Party. I think that is fine. I do not like how he had brought in both the Butcher, Blade, and Bunny, as well as TH2 into this as well. Butcher, Blade, and Bunny have been all over the place. First they were MJF's mercenaries, then a part of Eddie Kingston's family. Now this. Not very consistent, those 3 are. While for TH2, as good as they are in the ring, they are jobbers. Almost the last time they've ever gotten a win. That wasn't on a YouTube show. Not impressed. Team Taz. I like Team Taz. Brian Cage is an absolute beast. Ricky Starks is always fun to watch. Taz is a good mouthpiece. Hobbs is a bit green, honestly, but I feel like there is something there. Though my issue with them is that on paper they are a force of nature, but they always end up losing. I thought Team Taz made assassins. From what I've seen, they have been treated like chumps, which is a shame. Brian Cage should have beaten Darby Allin for the TNT title. Cage and Starks should have beaten Darby and Sting in the street fight, but nope, they always lose. Not to mention, what is the deal with the FTW title belt that Cage always carries around? From what I'm led to believe, it is not an official AEW title, but it is defended every now and again. Make up your mind, is it a proper championship? If it is, make it a real title. Make it the AEW equivalent of the Hardcore Championship. If it is not a proper title, then scrap it, because it is confusing. Championship belts are not props, nor are they display pieces. The Pinnacle. I'm mixed on them. On one hand, I like the premise of it. On the other hand, I'm convinced that this group only exists to benefit MJF, because a lot of the other members don't really need the group per se. FTR was already successful before joining. They were tag champs after all. Wardlow is a beast in the ring, and I feel like he should have ditched MJF by now, while for Shawn Spears, I hate to say, he is the weak link of the group. His only accolade here in AEW is smacking Cody Rhodes in the head with a chair. And that was 2 years ago. He hasn't done anything of note then, and he's not going to now, unfortunately. Sorry, the truth is the truth. Now, I'm not going to say that the Pinnacle is bad, but I will say that their feud with the Inner Circle really needs to end. They had a blood and guts match and a Stadium Stampede match. It could have ended with either of those two showdowns, but no, they're dragging it out and are doing all the single matches. I'm confused by this. Aren't you normally supposed to do the normal matches like Spears versus Guevara, FTR versus Santana Ortiz, Jericho and MJF before the marquee matches? Why are they doing it in reverse? After watching the spectacle of the first two clashes, normal matches seem boring. Case in point, the UFC cage match, and I'm using air quotes for this one, between Jake Hager and Wardlow. It was so goddamn boring. The way this feud is going, it won't end until one of the groups is forced to break up, and I do not agree with that. The Pinnacle just formed a few months ago, and it would be idiotic to have them dissolve now. While for the Inner Circle, they are the most popular thing AEW has going for it, and it is not smart to break them up now, especially since they just turned face. So they kind of booked themselves into a corner here. Then we get to the group who I'd say that AEW completely wasted. That would be the Dark Order. After Brody Lee's unfortunate passing, the crowd support for the Dark Order was astronomical. If you were to put the tag titles and the TNT title on any member of the Dark Order, the crowd would have supported it. But the company never took advantage of that. And I'd have to say the period of time when the group was over has passed, and I do not see them reaching those levels again. It also doesn't help that they are kind of wanderless without Brody Lee, like they have no purpose now. What is the goal of the Dark Order now? From what I've seen, they've been relegated to the Hangman Adam Page fan club, or the de facto police force who break up brawls. They really need to do something with them, particularly the members who don't do much. As much as I like John Silver and Ten, you got other members to focus on. Like, when was the last time Colt Cabana or Alan Angels did something of note? Things really need to be done with these factions.
It was a stupid idea from bad creative and all that's gone.
I feel like even the most staunch of AEW defenders will admit that the women's division is not good. The only thing that NXT beats AEW in is their women's division. I saw the commercial saying that NXT has the best women's division in wrestling, and all I gotta say is, they are not wrong. Better than Raw, SmackDown, and most definitely AEW. However, I am hopeful that things will change for the better, that Britt Baker is now women's champion. All the previous champions were not great. Riho was likable, but not really someone I would say who is world champion material. It is even more far-fetched that she beat the likes of Nyla Rose to become champion. Speaking of who, Nyla was kind of forgettable as champion. Never really cared for her. The powerful brute gimmick has been done 1,000 times and been done better. Then we get to Hikaru Shida, the longest reigning champion. I like Shida, but her title reign was just awful. She's good in ring, but she has no personality, no charisma. Now do me a favor, and please spare me the comment saying that she is Japanese, and English is not her first language. You don't need to be able to talk, or talk much to be charismatic. Case in point, Asuka. Hell, if they were concerned about that, why not give Shida a manager, or a mouthpiece? But hey, they don't really need to worry about her speaking, since she is hardly on Dynamite, since there were periods of time where she would not be there for weeks on end. And the number of times she defended that belt in a year are few and far between. The only people I remember her fighting were Ty Conti, Nyla Rose, and Thunder Rosa. I'm sure there are more, but I can't for the likes of me remember, nor be barred to look it up. I mean, seriously, they were just waiting for the moment to put the belt on Dr. Britt. I mean, why wouldn't they? She's probably the only thing keeping this so-called division afloat. Case in point, when she was in a wheelchair for months and gave us more memorable moments than Shida, who was the champion during that period of time. Honestly, You can say that it is bad booking on the company's part in which your entire division revolves around one sole person, especially one who is injured and cannot compete, and it is bad booking. But Britt Baker is outstanding. She's come a long way. I haven't forgotten that post-match promo on the cruise ship. Oh, that was dreadful. But she's moved past it and can elevate the women's division. Though that shouldn't be too hard since the bar was so low that was just lying on the floor. Even though they should not put all their hopes on Britt Baker. They need to push their other female talents. They have good prospects like Ty Conti, Chris Statlander, Jade Cargill, and Penelope Ford. Use them, and for God's sake, have more than one women's match a show.
It was a stupid idea from bad creative and all that's gone.
I am not a fan of crossovers. Never have, never will. Mainly because all crossovers, whether it be video games, TV, or comics, don't really make it to where both sides are presented favorably. Only one will really look good in the eyes of the people, and that will be at the expense of whoever it be that they're having a crossover event with. The same thing can be applied with wrestling, which is why I never really cared for Survivor Series in the WWE, since it doesn't do anything for both sides, since no one really cares about the people on the other brand until the month of November hits. Then after Survivor Series, their artificial rivalry fades away. But we're here not to talk about the Survivor Series being utterly pointless. Why do I bring this up in the case of AEW? Because they like to get involved with a lot of other promotions. By either having their talent be able to compete in other promotions, or by having a different promotion have them put one of their titles on the line on an episode of Dynamite. Why do I bring this up? Simple. I do not care. I do not care about the NWA Women's Championship, the NWGP United States Championship, the AAA Mega Championship, or the Impact Tag Team Championship. If I did, I would watch NWA, New Japan, AAA, and Impact respectively. I care about the company who I am currently watching. I want to see the championship matches with their own titles instead of someplace else. I swear, I've seen the NWA Women's Championship defended more than the AEW Women's Championship. That is sad. Also, I want to mention the belt collector thing that Kenny Omega's doing. When I first saw that, I thought it was absolutely godly coming out covered in all those belts. My one critique with the belt collector gimmick would have to be that there was no build-up to it. It kinda just happened. I know that Kenny had the AAA title for a long time already, so I won't fault him for that. But the Impact World title, yes, I will. They did not mention it once that Kenny was going after the Impact World title. I only mentioned it after he had it. There was no build-up for it on the AEW side of things. I'm sure the build-up on the Impact side of it was fine, I think. I'm assuming. I don't actually have an idea of what happened there. If you are watching Impact, tell me what you think about the whole Kenny thing and how it has impact. I'm very curious to hear it from an actual Impact fan. From my perspective, which is an outsider looking in, I don't think Impact has benefited from this little alliance that they got going on with AEW. All we have really seen from it is the Good Brothers and Don Callis becoming more prominent figures on AEW, and a brief cameo appearance of Private Party and Matt Hardy showing up on Impact. That was it. I mean, it would be one thing if we saw, I don't know, who's a big name Impact superstar? Let's say Sami Callihan. He shows up on Dynamite trying to hunt down Kenny and reclaim the world title. That would bring in some eyes, or have it to where some more noteworthy names show up on Impact, like Jericho, Moxley, or Hangman to make an appearance. But we don't see that. To be honest, I forgot about this angle existing every now and again, only until the commentators remind me that this is indeed a thing happening. This isn't some sort of invasion angle like we got with WWE and WCW. Whatever this is, it's only being used to bolster up AEW. What's the saying that people like to mention? The forbidden door has been opened? If you ask me, that door should have remained shut. I don't have an issue with them mentioning and acknowledging other companies, especially if some of their talent have accolades there that are worth acknowledging. They should not be doing pointless title matches and inter-promotional stuff that is going to have no real significant impact when it's all over.
It was a stupid idea from bad creative and all that's gone.
There are many things in which people criticize AEW for. One thing I will often hear is that AEW is always signing former WWE talent. To be honest, I don't consider that an issue. What do you expect them to do? Not sign a person who could be a valuable asset to their company just because they worked somewhere else? Don't forget the old saying, one man's trash is another person's treasure. Just because someone in WWE wasn't used to their fullest doesn't mean that they don't have their worth. However, if you want to make the argument that AEW likes to showcase former WWE talent over their homegrown stars, that is something you could make a good argument for, and is something I could agree with. Another thing worth mentioning would be AEW constantly taking pot shots at the WWE. I'm not saying that they can't poke fun of them every now and again, just don't make it a reoccurring thing where they reference them on a weekly basis. Or better yet, don't get all offended when someone starts pointing out your flaws and mistakes. Seriously, if you're going to be flinging mud, don't get all pissy and defensive when you get some flung back at you. Turnabout is fair play. Now, I want to re-emphasize this point from the start of the video. This is not an AEW hate video. I want them to do well. I am just highlighting the issues that they have and need to resolve if they want everlasting success. Because if they carry on this current course, I wouldn't be surprised if All Elite Wrestling, 10 years from now, either fades into obscurity where no one really talks about it anymore, or if it gets bought out by another company and ceases to be. Two things that I don't want to happen. For the time being, I am probably going to stop watching Dynamite for a good long while. Maybe I might check it again in 2 years to see how they're doing. Is it excessive? Not really. I took a 4-year hiatus from WWE, so 2 years is nothing. Now tell me, what do you think about AEW? Is it a flash in the pan that's going to fizzle out, or will it revolutionize the wrestling world? Do you agree with my criticism, or was there something that you felt like should be mentioned? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. Until next time, I will catch you all on the flip side.